tax evasion and tax avoidance.
Yes.
Ordinarily, people tend to differentiate it by saying one is legal, the other is illegal. Like an athlete can, earn an income in another foreign jurisdiction, despite the fact that they are Kenyan citizens. Are you going to be taxed twice, both in the foreign jurisdiction and also in Kenya? It is usually very critical for them to have a KRA PIN certificate. And once you have your KRA PIN certificate, then now you can apply for what we call the income tax exemption, right? This is because associations can be exempted from paying tax. If a corporate entity wanted to sponsor, let's say, a sporting association duly registered, then it's easier. Well, I won't categorize it as maybe just the common mistakes that athletes make, because at the end of the day, an athlete is also a taxpayer.
Advocate of the High Court, Baston Woodland, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
It's a great honor having you with us.
The pleasure is mine as well.
Yeah, and someone might wonder, what is a tax practitioner doing with us today at the episode? But stay tuned, because this episode aims to educate, empower, and elevate everyone in the sports value chain by exposing the hidden gems in Kenya's tax and legal frameworks that can analyze or catalyze into sponsorship, secure athletes earning, and scale up sports development from the grassroots leveled up. And not just that, Baston has been active in the sports world, for some time. I don't know if he still plays basketball, or do you still hoop?
Once in a while I try. Yeah.
Once in a while?
Yeah, once in a while.
You discovered a new sport?
Yes, I got a new sport.
Which is?
Somewhere along Lavington. Yes.
And now you do golf, I hear?
I golf as well. Yeah.
How's golfing?
Golf is amazing. It's a game of patience. It teaches you a lot as well. Sometimes not every day is the same day.
Yeah.
Your golf today can be good. Tomorrow you're playing the worst golf ever. So it teaches you endurance.
Yes.
It teaches you also consistency, and how you can stay, the same every single day as you play. Yeah.
And everything in the world usually revolves around one thing: sports lessons. Just as you've highlighted some of the important things that golf teaches you, and you're really relating that to life, you're relating that to your day-to-day duties.
Yes.
But before we delve deeper into today's topic, maybe the viewers might be wondering, like, who is Baston? If you can formally introduce yourself, please.
I thought you were going to do that. But anyway, my name is Baston Woodland, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. I practice under the name of Baston Woodland and Company Advocates, or shortly also known as BWC Law. We major in corporate commercial law. We major in tax law as well. I'm equally a tax practitioner. And once in a while, I also do business daily tax commentary.
How did you get involved in all this? Where did it all start?
In tax, or generally?
Generally.
I don't know. Okay, for tax, really, I think it's just the sophistry in tax. I mean, everyone views tax as a very technical subject. The understanding is equally as technical. So I felt maybe I can be the bridge between those technicalities within our tax legislations and trying to simplify it to my clients, or simplifying it to the general public as well.
Just to delve much deeper now into the topic, what are the most common tax mistakes that athletes make and federations?
Well, I won't categorize it as maybe just the common mistakes that athletes make, because at the end of the day, an athlete is also a taxpayer. So it's literally the mistakes that all taxpayers usually make. So, and this one can be looked in a different manner. But for purposes of today's meeting, I think what I can discuss is just the general common tax mistakes that everyone makes, and particularly athletes. Most of the athletes in Kenya don't declare their income. And this is because when you look at taxation on the athletes' perspectives, we find that an athlete can, earn an income in another foreign jurisdiction, despite the fact that they are Kenyan citizens or they're Kenyan residents for tax purposes, but they fail to declare whatever they earn in those other jurisdictions. And these can be, prize winnings, endorsements, sponsorship deals. So sometimes it's equally important for you to declare this income. So non-declaration of income, I think it's an issue. Others are also, bookkeeping, which I think cuts across both athletes, taxpayers, bookkeeping and record keeping. This one usually aids everyone in terms of when they are filing their annual returns. Like currently, we're just about to file our annual return for the financial year of 2023-2024. So without a proper bookkeeping, then you end up being on the wrong side of the tax man. Yeah. So those can just be the general issues.
Yeah, so you talked about declaration. Let's say an athlete, sometimes there are tournaments that happen and there's a prize money, for example, that's tagged on the championship of that tournament. So whenever athletes win such tournaments, do they also need to declare such amounts? Sometimes in those tournaments, cash is paid in. I know I'm putting you in a hard place. But cash is paid in money is paid in cash.
Yeah.
Sometimes via M-Pesa. Sometimes others go through the bank accounts. In such instances, to avoid getting into tax problems, what can athletes do in such instances?
I mean, literally, it's just a declaration of income, because at the end of the day, whatever you're earning, whether it's a prize winning, it's an income that you're earning by virtue of the athletic activity that you're doing or the sporting activities that you're doing. The assumption of the law is that that is an income and it needs to be declared. So, yeah, a declaration of income is equally important. Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes we do make lots of mistakes being maybe you're in university, you already have your KRA pin, then you go for some of these tournaments and you don't declare, then it comes back and bites you. Can you help guide on the processes of now, if it comes back and now you need to pay back what you didn't declare, or if it comes to the light and KRA has been trying to monitor your movements and everything?
KRA will only usually come in. Like having a KRA PIN certificate is important, because it's one of those documents that opens up several, I can call opportunities in terms of even a simple thing as opening a bank account, as long as you're 18 years and above. One of the requisite documents is your KRA PIN certificate. So those ones are just documents that assist you to facilitate certain transactions. But now, importantly, is when you're, let's say you are employed, you're a salaried athlete somewhere and you're earning an income every monthly, then your taxes will, of course, be paid through what you call the pay as you earn tax. Yeah.
Okay. You get to a point of now, the federations, clubs. Federations get resources in different ways. In the cluster of now federation clubs or teams, how do they operate around taxation?
Well, that's a very important question, because, and also that can be, when you're discussing some of the common mistakes, I wish you would have tied that to some of the common mistakes that federations face and also sports associations face. Because you find that sports associations in their very nature are public in nature, right? And secondly, they are like community-based associations or community, what I can call community-based organizations, the CBOs or even the NGOs, right? But one of the critical elements that they usually fail to adhere to is the registration for KRA. This one I will explain how that is important in my subsequent analysis. But it is usually very critical for them to have a KRA PIN certificate. And once you have your KRA PIN certificate, then now you can apply for what we call the income tax exemption, right? This is because associations can be exempted from paying tax under the Income Tax Act, particularly the first schedule of the Income Tax Act, paragraph 10. It gives associations the leeway to, as long as they can prove that they are public nature in character, they can prove that how's this called? They alleviate poverty, right? They address all these societal issues right? And they're also charitable in nature, then that in itself can allow them to be exempted from paying tax, right? So that is important. Like, register your KRA PIN, then apply for income tax exemption. Now, as I mentioned earlier, how is this important in the sporting world? It's important to the extent that if a corporate wants to sponsor, right, an association, it's easier for whatever money the corporate is doing, which will be like a donation, to be exempted or to be a deductible allowance on the part of the corporate. So it's easier. So if a corporate entity wanted to sponsor, let's say, a sporting association duly registered, then it's easier. Whatever amount they're giving cannot be looked at as maybe they were trying to get a financial benefit out of that transaction. No, it was a pure donation, and that pure donation can be an allowed expense in their books, right? Hence, even assisting the corporate body to have a lower taxable income at the end of the day. Yeah. So that is also how the nexus that you can create between, the corporate entities that are willing to sponsor federations and also willing to sponsor sports associations.
Yeah. And I like your response right there, because that response has made me realize, can that be one of the reasons why corporates are kind of limited towards sponsoring some of these sports federations or teams or activities? Maybe, I'm not saying they are, but maybe they might be not duly registered. That is why the corporate is kind of holding back.
Exactly. Because for the corporates also in their books, remember, any entity, especially a corporate entity, whatever amount they give out, right, it should be recorded in their books, right? And when it's recorded in their books, they want to record it as an allowable expense, meaning a donation that you're giving to an entity. So that particular sports association or that federation that you're giving out, or even that team that you want to sponsor, they have to have proper records. And one of the proper records is they have to be duly registered as an association, 1. 2, they have to procure a KRA PIN certificate. And 3, they have to declare that they are not a business entity, right? Hence, they should be exempted from paying taxes. So it's easier even for the corporate entities now to directly deal with such associations, teams, or even federations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and the viewers out there, I hope you're taking note on that, specifically, the corporate, specifically the federations and teams and clubs out there sourcing for funding and sponsorship from corporates. Maybe it's not going through just because of you don't have the right papers or registration that is needed for fully sponsorship. There are two words, that gets to confuse people a lot. And I know maybe you get this question a lot. Tax evasion and tax avoidance.
I always predicted that was the question you're going to ask. Yeah, so tax evasion and tax avoidance.
Yes.
Ordinarily, people tend to differentiate it by saying one is legal, the other is illegal. I think that is the starting point. Yeah. So one will argue that tax avoidance is basically legal, whereas tax evasion is illegal. But in the strict sense of it, especially when you look at it within the purview of the Income Tax Act in Kenya, and also the tax legislation known as the Tax Procedures Act, you find that it's a very nuanced distinction, right? And that simply means that in Kenya, both of them can be, declared as illegal from the onset, because the Tax Procedures Act in itself talks about any tax planning method that you are using to reduce the liability that you're supposed to pay. And if KRA finds that, then you will be penalized to pay double the tax that you ought to have genuinely paid, right? So the distinction is very nuanced, but I think the general interpretation by so many people is that one is legal, the other is illegal, and I don't know if we can go deeper beyond that, but perhaps we can just leave it at that. Yeah, but in the simplest fashion, when you talk about tax avoidance, it literally means tax planning. Yes, just that you are planning your tax affairs in order so that to reduce the tax liability that you're supposed to pay at the end of the year or at the end of the month or whichever period. And when you talk about tax evasion, it's basically non-declaration of income, right? You don't want to declare maybe even the profits that you made. You don't want to declare, or you're trying to evade taxes, right? So you see, when you interpret the two, it's a very nuanced distinction between the two. It's a tale. I usually say it's a tale of two cities that sometimes they can overlap each other. Yeah.
How can entities like, teams and clubs, federations within the sporting world, within the sporting sector, apply tax, the legal one, which is tax avoidance, right?
Like I said, it's not purely legal at the end of the day, but the general, should I say, misconception or the general thought of it is that it's legal. But at the end of the day, when you look at our tax legislations, particularly the Tax Procedures Act, both of them are almost declared illegal by the relevant tax provisions. But anyway, when you talk about tax planning for athletes, they can look at it from the point of investments, point of management, and that is now how they can start, maybe coming up with things like trust. Yeah, so they can register their trust for purposes of, management of whatever income that they have. And also, other than tax, it also helps them to properly manage their affairs, and then to also give that more or less like a contingency plan, what we call an estate planning or succession planning of your wealth, or wealth planning. Yeah, so those are some of the areas that you can look at it. And then also just the normal thing like choosing the best business model on how to transact, because you find there are certain athletes that perhaps will want to transact directly. There are athletes that will want to transact through an agent. There are athletes that they even, for instance, they've registered a company for purposes of, getting into other endorsement deals and whatnot. So yeah, so choosing the best business vehicle, choosing the best module on how to deal, yeah, is also important.
Bringing it home to Kenya, which are some of the top 3 business best vehicles to deal for athletes?
I think it'd just be definitely, let's say, just a limited liability company. I think.
Limited liability.
Yeah, limited liability company. How it's beneficial, it gives you that asset protection. It ring fences the liability, your individual liability, and also the company liability. So the assets that you own in the company are not defined to mean that they are your assets. They're actually defined to mean, their company assets. So I think that is usually one of the best business module on how to deal.
Yeah. What of under now federations and clubs? Which are the best ways for?
Is associations. Sports associations, yeah. You just register sports associations, and that one can be done through the Societies Act, which gives you the liberty to register that sports association. And also now, it's also beneficial, when you associate in some form of an entity, especially as an association. It's easier for you to deal with the corporates in terms of sponsorship deals.
I know you've already answered this partly, but what should an athlete consider when signing endorsements or marketing deals? I know you've already, the vehicle you choose has to be a consideration, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a limited liability, whether it's trust or whichever. But are there any more ways or things to consider that you can bring on the table when an athlete is signing endorsements and some of this marketing?
Yeah. I think that's a very good question. Particularly, you see, when you talk about sports, and this is when you look at the intersection between sports and tax, is because athletes are people that can get an earning from any jurisdiction, right? It can be in a foreign jurisdiction, it can be the UK, the US, or whatever place that they have actually conducted the sporting activity in. So one of the primary considerations is the tax residency, right? So before you get into that sponsorship deal. You have to know, is the sponsorship deal in Kenya? Meaning, does the Kenyan tax laws apply to you? Is the sponsorship deal in the UK? Meaning that now we are going to look at the parameters of international taxation, how we call it. Whatever income that you're earning in that particular foreign jurisdiction, what is the tax implication of it in Kenya as well? Are you going to be taxed twice, both in the foreign jurisdiction and also in Kenya? And when you're doing such sponsorship deals, especially in the foreign jurisdiction, the tax implication is usually huge. And that's why you also need to understand which kind of transaction you're entering into. And whether that jurisdiction also, Kenya has a double taxation agreement with that particular jurisdiction. That one will just primarily assist you in terms of not paying taxes twice. Because if you have a DTA, you are a Kenyan resident, you're a Kenyan athlete, and you get some earnings in a foreign jurisdiction. If there's a DTA between the two jurisdictions, then whatever tax that you pay in that particular jurisdiction can actually be considered when you're in Kenya. And that is why now, when you look at the international tax space, we talk about two methods. There's usually something called the exemption method and also the credit method. So the exemption method will simply mean that whatever you're earning in a foreign jurisdiction can be exempted from tax in the local jurisdiction, which is Kenya. But if it's in the credit method, then it means whatever tax you've already paid there will be considered on this other side, although at a progressive rate or a regime. Yeah, so it's a little bit technical, but
but
the general view of it is that way. So you need to consider the tax residency. You need to. I think that's usually very critical when you're signing these endorsement deals or sponsorship deals. Yeah.
Which, you're bringing a very important thing up. Sometimes it's too hard for an athlete to have that idea or thought of, tax, jurisdictions and all those things and how they apply. There's this perception that people have generally, not just athletes. If I involve Boston Woodland advocates, they're just coming to still cut on the amount. What are the advantages when an endorsement is on the table for an athlete to engage people like you?
Yeah, I think first, even without looking at the tax implication of the endorsement deal or the sponsorship deal, it's you look at it also from the contractual vetting process, because you have to have a detailed understanding on which kind of contract is this that you are entering into, and what are your obligations, and what are the obligations of the other party, and what are some of the breaches, that either party may enter into, or the consequences of that particular breach. And also things like your image rights. You might enter into a sponsorship deal, and you fail to consider something like your image rights. Yeah. So they are very very technical and critical issues that need to be vetted first, and that can be properly done, I think, by someone with a legal background to look into all that space. Yeah.
So people to look for, people like you to guide them through these processes to avoid, the huge losses and other cost implications that are coming up later. And sometimes, corporate tech, there are people who tech, not corporate. I withdraw that word. There are people, slip of the tongue. There are people who take advantage of, athletes not having that know-how or knowledge of such, and, benefit more from the athlete versus also the athlete benefiting from them. And as Wima Sports, we are geared towards, championing sports development, not just for the general, but mostly athletes need to start getting more zeros in their paycheck, be it through endorsements or be it through remuneration. And that. On to the next one. Are there any tax frameworks that helps sponsors benefit from investing in sports? I know you already talked about the exemptions. Is there something else apart from the exemptions?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the allowable deductions, because the only way also the corporate benefit in that transaction is if whatever money they're donating, they can easily expense it on their side. And by expensing it on their side, it helps them to reduce the taxable income. Hence, they end up paying slightly lower tax, as otherwise they wouldn't have, if at all they did not have that amount as an allowable expense in their book. Also, secondly, is just the structure. I mean, I think corporates want to deal with people or associations that are structured. So how are these sports associations structured? And the number one point is they have to be duly registered under the Societies Act. That is easier for engagement. At least they have their chairperson, they have their representatives, they have their treasurer. It's easier to deal with such an association of body. Yeah.
The one important factor that indeed is coming up is, the duly registration process, and they're duly registered, which is really key and important. How can high school and college sports, leverage into existing tax policies to attract more private funding and grow sustainability and grow in a sustainable way? Because now sports in college or high school, maybe they don't have the liberty to register as associations because they're under that school.
Yes.
So in such scenarios, how can it work for them?
Now it's easier for now the school as the entity to approach the sponsorship.
Okay.
Right, or to approach the sponsors rather. So it's easier if they come in that light. Yeah.
Okay. So now at least schools, universities, they have first-hand opportunity compared to now the other associations, because
at least they're structured. Yeah,
they're
at least
structured.
Structure. Yeah.
Gotcha. Are there legal safeguards, and what are some of those safeguards that athletes put in place to protect their income from, international or local deals? Again, you already mentioned this, but what are some of these more that you can add on to?
Yeah, I think primarily the legal safeguards that they can use is maybe tax residency also. I'll just try to hammer the point home.
Yes.
The tax residency issue. So if a Kenyan athlete maybe, is in a foreign jurisdiction, maybe signed by another foreign club, then of course they won't be in Kenya for all those number of days. Like for instance, when you look at our Income Tax Act, the only way that you're supposed to be taxed is one, if you're a permanent resident in Kenya, or you have a permanent home in Kenya, for instance, and then two, if you don't have a permanent home, but you've been in Kenya for a period of about 183 days, right? Then you're liable to be taxed. And then three, if you're also in Kenya for about 122 days in each subsequent year of the financial year, then you are equally liable to be taxed. So you can find that an athlete that is not in Kenya for that particular period of time, then of course maybe their income might not be taxed at that point. Yeah. Yeah. So again, that just looks at tax residency. And then also another issue, I mean, it's when you're in foreign jurisdiction, I think the most important thing also to know is whether we have a DTA, if Kenya has a DTA with that particular country. Yeah, because the DTA, that is the double taxation agreement, it gives you some relief in terms of what you're supposed to be taxed, both in the foreign jurisdiction and also in Kenya. And to a certain degree also, the amount of taxes that you might be paying in that foreign jurisdiction, you can use it as a tax credit when you're here, and maybe just to help you reduce your liability while you're here.
Yeah. So athletes, we need to check on the DTA.
Yeah.
Very key. In whichever countries you're signing for contracts. What roles, can legal firms like yours play in negotiating, some of these sponsorship contracts between corporates and sports organizations? What key roles do you guys play?
We play transactional roles, meaning we advise both clients. If you're acting for the corporates, we'll advise them in terms of even the tax implications. Yeah, whichever financial benefit they're deriving from that particular sponsorship deal can also be looked at it from the tax angle. Two, we also look at the contract documentation process. These contracts need to be thorough. They need to be thoroughly reviewed. They need to be thoroughly drafted so that there's no any loophole that might be manipulated by either side to the detriment of the other. So we take people through that contractual reviewing process as well. Yeah.
Which is key, which is really key. We talked about trusts, and we didn't delve deeper into it. But can family trusts be used to manage some of the athletes' wealth and protect their legacy? And how does that work legally and tax-wise?
Yeah, I mean, family trusts are also very key, and the primary reason as to why these family trusts are usually registered is particularly for management, wealth management, and estate planning. So estate planning is basically what happens after your death, for instance, right? Are your assets protected? And maybe your kids, your children, how will they benefit from that particular trust that has been established? And also, under our tax legislation, there's always a benefit also to have this trust, because any asset that you transfer to a family trust is usually exempted from tax, so you don't pay tax when you're transferring the asset to a family trust. However, the catch is usually when now you're transferring from the family trust to either yourself or to someone else, then now there's a tax implication, yeah, in that. And also another tax implication is on whichever income the family trust makes, then that income can also be taxed. So, because remember, you can also still more or less trade, or the family trust can be engaged in a financial activity that derives an income or a financial benefit. So that particular income or benefit that the trust gets can still be subjected to tax. So the benefit for a family trust technically is when you're transferring whatever you're transferring to the trust, it's usually exempted. But the issue is when you're getting it out of a trust, there's a tax implication. So the income that you're getting in the trust, there's a tax implication as well.
Tax implication. Yeah. Just to get it right, let's say Jermaine is a sprinter. He's ran his 2024-2025 season, made $100 million through the season. I come back home, decide to invest in an apartment, a whole 8-floor apartment. So, and I have a family trust. So if I have a family trust, then if I take that asset and put it under the family trust, so it's exempted from taxation.
Yes. And primarily the reason why that usually happens is even other than the tax implication on that is on now the estate planning. Because we Kenyans for the longest time we've had succession disputes, inheritance disputes, right? And this is because the properties have not been collected and collated together. Properties are left, right, and center. But for the trust is now you're bringing all these things that you have, throwing them in within the trust. So it's easier even for that planning. And that's why it's called estate. It's the best vehicle for estate planning and succession planning, and also wealth management, because now it's easier for the trust to keep the records of whichever wealth the trust is generating or whichever asset in the trust is generating. Yeah.
Very key important points right there. I'm learning a lot myself. And I think I'll be looking for you guys after this to secure some of these things. What are some of the current policies that you think Kenya should reform to better support sports development through tax and legal incentives?
I think we should have, I've never come across, let's say, a target, or rather let me phrase it this way. We should encourage target specific tax reliefs or incentives, particularly for sports, right? So that even, for instance, any amount that a corporate entity is sponsoring or donating to a sport association should not just be considered as a donation, but also a deductible allowance, a deductible expense on their books. So that is even easier, right? So we need to have these tax reliefs, tax rebates for anyone that intends to sponsor sporting activities, and also for anyone that, a private individual that just wants to, someone wants to have a sporting complex. It should even be waived, 100% waive on investment on such a sporting complex. So maybe we should think along the lines of a target-based tax incentive measures. Yeah, this will encourage sporting development.
Why do you think it's not happening though? I mean, we are in a sporty country. What are some of the reasons? I know it's a tough question to answer, but why do you think it's not happening in this day and age?
I'd say maybe we haven't given it the attention it deserves, the attention that sports deserve in the country, and it's one of those areas that maybe we don't want to put a lot of resources in. And I think it's high time that we put a lot of financial resources, which also includes tailor-making our financial laws, like our tax laws, to actually assist in sporting activities. Yeah, so there's a lot that can be done that has not yet been done, but we wish we will, the country will move forward towards having a better investment strategies in sports. Yeah.
So as is now, let's say if I want to set up a complex, am I able to legally file for an exemption from some of those taxations?
I think what you're generally able to do is to have what we call investment deductions, right? So if and investment deduction is also there's a threshold for that. For instance, if you're investing over 1 billion Kenya shillings in a sporting complex, then you are able to get some tax reliefs on that. Yeah.
Very key important points right there. There is lots of importance in financial and legal literacy. And this is one key that is lacking within the athlete's career in Kenya. If we compare to developed countries, maybe athletes have basic knowledge of this. And what are your thoughts on this? Should this be introduced at academy or college levels, or how can we better create financial and legal literacy within our athletes?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question because, the financial literacy bit is for the athlete to understand that they themselves as an individual and the sporting activities that they're doing, they're a business, from the onset, right? And business in the sense that everyone might want to work with you. You might want to get endorsement deals, you might want to get sponsorship deals. So how do you then manage all these, right? And how do you utilize whatever you're getting for financial prosperity? Yeah, and that is why the issues are like trust is coming in. Why don't they channel this amount in for instance, in a trust, right? And when you look at very developed countries, I mean, the first thing all athletes are taught is the financial literacy and wealth creation, right? And for them, they're even advised, even in the tax implication in whatever they're doing. For instance, I don't know if you remember, there was a very interesting case of Messi back in when he was playing in Barcelona, that is around 2007, 2009. And what occurred is he was getting either expatriating some income that he was earning from the Spanish league, but through his image rights. So the image rights, he was getting income from a company that was set up in a tax haven, right? And so the Spanish tax authorities say that, what you're literally doing is more of a tax evasion. Yeah, actually now marrying to what you had asked me earlier. So it's like what he did was more of a tax evasion, because like you're trying to evade paying taxes by having your image rights companies registered in a tax haven. So the gist of this all is that understanding, because actually he was penalized. He ended up paying double the amount in fines and penalties, plus double the tax that he ought to have paid in the Spanish league. But literally, this one talks about even that financial literacy. So for me, financial literacy is just not knowing how to manage your finances generally. It's also able to understand the tax implications of your decisions, of your financial decisions. Yeah, that is how I look at it.
Yeah, which is key, being able to understand the tax implications of your financial decisions, be it which country is scouting me, where am I going to play pro out there, and all those things that
And which kind
have
of contracts I'm getting myself into.
yeah,
Yeah.
they all have a ripple effect back down to your financial sustainability. On to the quickfire segment section. I know you're a guy who likes sports a lot, and these are two brands that I've seen you don for a long time. Nike or Adidas for a life contract.
Nike all day.
Nike all day.
Nike all day.
Rugby 7s or 15s, which one deserves a tax break?
I think both.
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 Come on, you have to choose one.
No, both.
It's
the
not
amount
either
of,
or,
yeah,
it's or.
no, the amount of the amount of work, the amount
Yeah.
of work, the amount of dedication these boys put themselves into. You know, sometimes they deserve some a little bit of a tax relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That's so true. Because the work is intense.
Yeah, it's very intense.
The
And
heat.
also you'll find that for certain sportsmen and women, like whatever they do is their day to day. You know, that is where they get their salaries from. That is basically their wholesome income that they get. You know, but also now pegging that to your earlier question, I think one of the disservice that you're doing as a country is we've made sport be like a secondary thing that someone does. It's not your your normal 8 to 5 kind of work.
Yeah.
So someone would rather go work, then in the evening they go practice. You see, but we need to put sports to, for it to be recognized that this itself is a form of employment for so many people.
And it's huge.
It's huge. It's huge.
One athlete needs like 7 to 8 plus professionals.
Exactly, yeah.
around them.
So even the trickle-down effect, and that's why when you look at developed countries, like for instance the US, which is very huge on sports, you'll find that by the mere fact that someone is even playing in the NBA, it has already opened doors for so many other people, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy has his cameraman there, earning a living. There's a sports agent earning a living. There's a lawyer assisting you in transactions in your contracts, earning a living. You know,
The medical team.
Yeah, there's a legal team. There's so much. Even the sports commentaries. You know, people write articles. There are guys just by virtue of, for instance, just by virtue of someone like LeBron James playing in the Lakers itself. How many people are indirectly employed just by the mere fact that LeBron is there? So many.
Huge.
So the ripple effect is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
One sports celebrity you'd love to represent in court?
Now that I mentioned, I think I'll say
I knew that.
I'll say LBJ.
LBJ. LeBron James.
LeBron James. Yeah. Yeah.
Not Kobe.
Man, may his soul rest in peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were a sports coach, what would your hilarious sideline rant be?
Oh my goodness. Work it out or walk out.
Work it out or walk out.
Yeah.
Simple.
Work it out or walk out. Yeah.
If you're
Just
not
get your
ready.
things together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other option is walk out. I mean, if
Walk
you can't
out,
do it,
yeah.
then just
Walk out.
Just walk out.
Yeah.
Nice one. I like that. Have you protected that tagline? Someone might want to use it.
I'm that creative. Anyone can use it. I'll get another one.
You get another one. Which tax jargon sounds like a football tactic?
Wow, I've never thought of that. That's interesting. Oh, let me think. Which tax jargon sounds like a
Football tactic.
football tactic?
Yeah.
I'll say transfer pricing, though it's international tax, but transfer pricing. It's more or less sounds like transferring one player
To the other.
to the other team. But in tax context, it's basically trying to look at your tax affairs between related parties. So yeah, to me, maybe transfer pricing.
Transfer pricing.
The same, yeah. I don't know. Another one will be. Oh, that's interesting. Another one should be. How's it called? I can say treaty shopping.
Treaty shopping.
Treaty shopping is basically, for football terms, I'll say is like scouting for the best player in the market. But for tax purposes, it will be scouting for the best jurisdiction that has a double tax agreement with another country. Yeah.
Like that. I like that. What's more stressful? Cross-examining a witness or watching Harambee Stars in penalties? Just for fun, viewers, just for fun.
I think I'd say watching Harambee Stars
in penalties.
in penalties.
Oh my God.
I didn't see that coming, but
Did you have a chance to watch the game that was at Nyayo Stadium?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
How was it?
Awesome.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, awesome.
I honestly liked how we did some stuff
Yeah.
in a different professional way. And
Exactly. And that's I think that just points out to the magnitude of how big sports is in this country. And if we could channel our resources, channel our energy, then I think sports has a very bright future. We honestly have a very bright future in sport.
Yeah.
If we just did put our house in order.
And Kenyans are talented.
Yeah, so many, man. We have athletes. We have, we have so many people. Just take a flight to Eldoret, for instance, on a normal day, Tuesday, Wednesday. Almost more than half of the flight is bordered with, foreign guys going to Eldoret, E10, just to witness what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is not an exaggeration. On a normal day, get a flight, JKIA, Jumbo Jet, from even on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday or a Thursday, more than half that flight you'll find it's foreigners. Going to Eldoret. And Eldoret, I think, is one of the places that has, how many flights go to Eldoret? As you might compare the number of flights going to Kisumu. Yeah, Eldoret probably has 2 or 3 in a day. And it's usually more or less packed with foreigners going there to E10 just to witness what we are doing.
Wow.
Yeah, so that just shows you, sometimes when you have something for so long, you don't recognize the greatness that it has in you.
True.
Yeah, and I think that's to us it's more or less we've made it like a normalcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are other guys who are seeing the potential in it. And McHugh, you will notice that also, so many foreign management companies have camps here, especially in Eldoret.
True.
Yeah, I was even surprised that there are guys in Eldoret that in E10 that actually they themselves are foreigners, but they have this outfit of inviting other foreigners
to come and train.
So they're the ones who are offering those training activities here locally. So you can imagine what we are losing.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. And just to build up on the point you said on, how sometimes we are used to taking some things for granted.
Yeah.
Or it's normalcy that you don't see its value.
Yeah.
Singapore Sevens just ended.
Yeah.
And there was this video, I was sent by a friend. She's in Singapore, so it was just somewhere guys chilling after the entire weekend packed Seventh series, and they were talking about the Kenyan corner.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
When we are home, we are like, we are used to singing those songs even from high school, primary, college. Now these guys, the Kenyan culture of jovialness and relentless,
the constant mood of
constant, and these guys are so full of enthusiasm because of just how amazing the Kenyan culture is.
Yeah.
This is off tax and off legal, but what do you think we are missing on how we need to brand on such stories for the betterment of the nation, or the culture of the nation around sports?
I think, yeah, that's a very good question. For me, I think for the longest time, I mean, sports is one of the number one exports that we can have as a country, and it's also one of the number one branding method that you can utilize, especially for the magical Kenya. I mean, it's sports. It's sports, because we are doing tremendously well in athletes. We have the Kipchoges. What they're doing. I mean, it's mind blowing. The records they're breaking is mind blowing.
Yeah,
Faith, the records. I mean, that lady. Anytime I see her running, I just know she's gonna break a record. Yeah. Like I'm not even, I'm not even sitting anywhere fidgeting. I just know this record is broken. So we should package our country as a sports destination. We can export that. We can make numerous earnings and revenues just by the mere fact. And there are so many people, like, for instance, when you attend some of these rugby circuits, I mean, everyone wants to don a Kenyan jersey, for the rugby sevens. There was a time when we were so huge, when, we had the Humphrey Kayanges, the Collins Injera, we were so huge, right?
Yeah.
So I think we just need to have that momentum going. We need to brand our country as a sporting destination, and make the lives of our athletes easier. And how easier can we do that? Let's give them a little bit of tax incentives, tax reliefs here and there. Let's encourage the corporates to sponsor sports, and also give these corporates tax reliefs as well, so that it's easier for them to make these sponsorship, easier for them to donate. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, sports grows.
Exactly.
As we wrap it up, Baston, indeed it was an amazing session, and
thank you so
thank
much.
you for being with us here at Wima Sports, hosted at Osoita Lodge, indeed, where our guests become family. If you had a chance, my brother, to sit with number one, and he would like to get your piece out of how to incentivize the culture of sports development through tax reliefs, what will you tell him?
I can literally tell him that we are sitting on a talent, right? That we've already seen over time. This talent is almost in explosion. Like, it's so huge. The momentum is so huge. What we have is so many other countries might not have. And particularly because when you look at the dynamics of our population, it's youthful. And these are guys with so much energy. Look at, for instance, the rugby sevens that we just played.
Yeah.
I mean, the average age there, I don't know, but guys are very young guys.
Yeah, the current team is a young team.
Yeah, it's a very young team, and I think that is what we need as a country. Let's try to create partnerships, especially even the public-private partnerships, right? With let's say the corporates. Let's create partnerships with like-minded individuals, even foreign investors who wish to invest in sports in the country. Let's open it up. Let's give them very good investment deductions plans and our tax legislations. Let's give them tax reliefs, right? Let's give the players tax reliefs as well, right? Like I said, for the normal person, you might be employed, you have your 8 to 5. For this athlete, for this sports person, they don't have that 8 to 5. Some of them will, they have to go to a formal employment, then later in the day, go for sports. But what if we make sports their formal employment? And that can equally mean increasing the tax bracket. Because if you're bringing all these people into sports as formal employment, it means also now the government expands the tax base, right? So that it's easier now, whatever earning they will be getting from their 8 to 5, which is sports in this matter, then the government will ultimately also get a leeway to have that amount taxed.
Yeah.
But if we push athletes to be doing 2 jobs or 3 jobs in a day, and still chase their passion, no one is going to declare their income that they earn from sports. Who's going to do that?
Yeah.
Because how they've gotten that income itself is very difficult. And it's through a lot of hardship.
Yeah.
So who is going to declare their income? Yeah. But if you encourage them and make sports a formal employment for the youth, then it's easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and the declarations will come willingly.
Yeah, declarations will come very much willingly. Sponsorship deals will come very much willingly. Endorsement deals will come back very much willingly. The competitive nature of sports will be there. And that will also improve our standings in the national and the international arenas.
That's so true.
Yeah.
As we wrap it up, the last question right here is brokerage affecting sports?
Brokerage affecting sports.
And I use brokerage as a term to
it's like agency affecting sports.
Yeah. Agency, then there's also, the corrupt brokerage, for me to do this.
Yeah, of course.
Understand?
Corruption is the ill of any society, and we do admit that Kenya, I think, has also one of the almost largest corruption, issues. So, I think at the end of the day, it does affect sports because it also it removes the meritocracy that should be there in sports. Yeah, so it affects that. Yeah.
And agency?
Agency in terms of
our culture and system is not yet.
Where now we have sports management.
Yeah, sports management and all
sports
these
agency
things.
firms.
Yeah, athlete wants to, as you said, focus on the 8 to 5, come back and focus on the field. Then I need to do my socials. I need to do my agency work. I need to manage myself. I mean, you're spreading yourself thin, and you can't even be able to be effective and efficient.
Yeah.
So how can we build that culture for athletes to be confident that I'm confident that anything legal, I'll go to Baston Woodland Advocates and I'll give them their, Caesar what belongs to Caesar. But I'll be safe legally. My trust will grow and all these other things. My contracts will be solid.
Yeah.
How can we inculcate that culture?
I think that has also been inculcated. I'll say it's a very, very evolving landscape to create the trust. And secondly, also, I've seen there's a lot of numerous work that has been done in our sports law. And that's why we even have the Sports Act, I think. Yeah, we have that. Even the sports arbitration processes, we have that. So I think all these are, it trickles down to how do we lay the legal frameworks? How do we lay the groundwork for everyone, to understand how the sports dynamics work in Kenya. Yeah, so you'll see that the management, the agency, it's so big in the US because, someone like LeBron James, for instance, he purely focuses on what he needs to do and how he needs to deliver. He won't focus on how is that contract drafted. Yeah, how is this done? How is that done? Because there's someone else taking care of that. Yeah, as long as that person also has the best interest of of the sportsmen and women. Yeah, so so it's a matter of trust. It's a matter of understanding the legal dynamics of how sports activities work in Kenya. Yeah.
We say thank you once again for being here with us at Wima Sports. We are now looking forward to a commentary, Pale Business Daily, centered specifically around sports taxation. I hope I'll be reading something around that soon.
Yes, I'll look into that.
If they allow you to.
Yes, I'll look into that. Yeah, but thank you once again.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me here. I think it was long overdue. We planned this for months and months and months. Finally, it has happened.
Something good takes time.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Viewers, it's your host here at Wima Sports signing out. Jermaine, salute.